Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining our latest webinar on fly tipping in social housing environments. So big thanks to Livvy for joining us today to share her thoughts and intelligence on this subject. Thanks everybody for joining. With that, Livvy, over to you. Thank you.
Lovely. So today's session, we are going to be looking at fly tipping solutions for social housing. And I'm going to introduce you to the projects that these insights have come from. We'll look at the interactive process that we're going to go through. So we'll think about segmenting audiences, researching the causes, devising an initiative. And so you will need a way of recording your answers to this. So pen, paper, screen, whatever it is. And then you'll have some chance to reflect on the questions I ask you. So this piece of work and the workshop that you're going to go through, the taster workshop, came about from some work that the Cambridgeshire Council, County Council recap group put together. So they were having some challenges, like all of you, with resident fly tipping. So black bag waste and bulky items. And they reached out for funding to their commissioner, the police commissioner, and then actually went on and got an innovation fund from UKTI because they wanted to look at behaviour change. And so they came to me asking what kind of messages should there be on signs to make it effective, to make them effective. And I turned around and said to Bryony, well, the thing is we need to understand what are the barriers to people doing these fly tipping behaviours. And then we can think about what is the appropriate solution. So the piece of work looked at a literature review, looking at what is understood around why people fly tip and what solutions are happening across the country from other local authorities. And we then applied this work within the Cambridgeshire area, working with the different district councils. And the guide, we then put together a guide which is relevant for enforcement officers, elected members and communication teams. So it's a quick reference guide. It's very visual and it's got lots of ways of understanding how to take action. And we've so far now delivered that to the Cambridgeshire County Council and the district councils within it, and Essex County Council and their district councils as an interactive workshop. And Essex County Council have done a 3-month duty of care campaign, which this supported. So I'm also using the insights with Metro Store. I'm currently working with them on a large social housing recycling rollout. And we are, and front and centre of that for the social housing team is fly tipping. So people coming into the estate and fly tipping, and then people within the estate fly tipping, bulky waste items, dumping black bags. So we're looking at this alongside the rollout. And the approach that we take to behaviour change isn't, what kind of thing is going to get people's attention, or what's going to really not offend people, but inspire them or make them feel guilty, or those kinds of things. We want to take a step back. So the approach that we take is based in behavioural science. And the first thing is to segment our audience or our residents. And anyone who works for a local authority, you're going to be shouting at me, but every resident is my audience. We have everyone to deal with. Everyone in the social housing block, we've got to deal with all of them. I hear you. But by understanding different segments, we can apply better solutions and we can address the different challenges that they face. So we also want to get specific on the behaviour. So fly tipping, well, what are we talking about? Are we talking about people dumping a black bag? Are we talking about people dumping a fridge? Is it people leaving things on the wall for their neighbours? What is it that they're doing? Then we want to understand what is causing the behaviour. And then we come to devise the initiative. We trial that and we learn and we iterate. So for today's session, I'm going to invite you to pick one of these 3 options. So we've got a resident group, we've got a family, dumping unwanted white goods. So that's a specific behaviour. We've got to choose from an older single person leaving rubbish next to the bins, like in this example, or a young couple who aren't using the recycling facilities. Now, you could say, well, what's not using recycling facilities got to do with fly tipping? Well, quite often that means that people then have a lot more waste in their black bags, and they can end up then dumping that. So that's a slight aside, but if there's something else that you want to look at, please go ahead and choose it, but make sure it's a specific resident group. So with this in mind, we will go to the first exercise. And these exercises I'm going to share with you, these are tools that you can apply to different campaigns. They're based in design thinking, behavioural science, marketing. These are tools that are used across the board. So this is useful for you to have. And the first one is a persona map. And what we do with persona map is we get really clear in our mind who is that target resident group. And today we don't have time to fill it all in. So I'm just going to invite you to note down on your piece of paper or on your screen. The name can come later, because don't spend all the time thinking about their name. Think about the age of this audience group. So are they in their early 20s, their late 50s, 40s? What is it? What do they do for a job? Are they employed? Are they not? Are they doing taxi work where they're actually working late shifts or night shifts? Where do they live? Do they live on the top floor? Do they live in a high-rise flat? Do they live in a low-rise flat? Are they on the bottom floor, the top floor? Who do they live with? So you're really building up a picture of this person, because all of these things will have an impact on their behaviour. So give you a couple of minutes to think about that, and then we're going to think about what are their pains and challenges day to day. So not about recycling or fly tipping or anything else, but what's really going on in their life, and then who their trusted messengers are. And if you've got any questions, come off mute and ask them, because there's no such thing as a stupid question. If you don't understand it, probably somebody else doesn't as well.
With this about about the type of person, are we stereotyping people? Because that's very difficult, because I would say that most people that cause problems with bin stores are very different to the people that cause problems with fly tipping. With bin stores, like that family who's not recycling enough, they tend to be aged sort of like between 25 and about 40. And 9 times out of 10, it's because they can't be asked. They just get their stuff and they throw it down. They're not recycling. And when we do some bin store clear outs and you have a look, and 70% of it could be recycled, and the recycle bins are empty, and the actual general waste is overflowing, and then you start to get the rodents, and then people complain about the rodents, but then they don't complain about how they're treating their bin store. It all knocks on. But you do get the odd ones where they're a lot younger or they're a lot older, causing the same kind of problems. But I think there's a massive difference between bin store abuse and fly tipping.
So exactly. So if you take the bin store abuse, that's a different behaviour to the fly tipping, exactly. And we want to get behind why they can't be bothered, because there's solutions to that, which we'll come into. So, and that might be more about their pains and challenges day to day. So yes, I would put in their age, 25 to 40. It is a bit of stereotyping, because we're going to put people in categories. There are generally, as you know, you have those different audience segmentation things that are produced by different people, like Resource Futures, which will give, or RAP, or things, and they'll give you like kind of and what's the word, a less derogatory kind of assumptions about people. But just if you obviously got a clear challenge in mind, so think about a specific audience, the people who you think can't be asked, and just have those in mind as we work through this. So, and what's really important about that target audience is, who do they trust? So and I hate to tell you this, anybody who works in a council, it's probably not you. It's quite often somebody else. So is it their neighbours that they trust? Is it somebody from the local community, especially if English isn't their first language? Are there particular, is it the local newspaper? So think about who it is that they trust, because this is where your opportunities lie. And just being kind to those people. What else is going on in their life? So what are their pains and challenges day to day? So is it that they're facing a lot of financial insecurity? Are they working 3 jobs? Have they got other challenges going on? So really understand what else is going on in their life. And obviously we're just making some assumptions here, but this is where you can carry out further research. So with this in mind, has everyone got something written down now? Just to give them some kind of and they've got someone in their mind to think through. So let's move on and think about the research part. So ideally, so for this piece of work, we researched with a literature review to understand what the barriers and the challenges were. If anyone attended the workshop a couple of weeks ago that I did for Metro Store, we looked at what those were. So quite often it's because people can't get to the local tip. They see their neighbours doing it. They don't know what a bulky waste service is. They don't know how to access things. They don't think it's important. Some people think that fly tipping is okay because other people benefit from it. It's not. They don't see it's a big issue. They're not attached to the local area. So there can be multiple reasons. To get better understanding around this, you can conduct research. I know finances are always quite tight, but things that we're doing at the moment with the project we're working on with Metro Store, we've been conducting telephone calls with people. We're going to be doing door knocking and on-street surveys. We're going to be asking people to collect, to give us diaries from using the new recycling bin systems. And with any of this kind of research, you need to provide people an incentive for their time. And you're not providing them with an incentive to do the behaviour, because that's a reward. And if you give people rewards, when they stop getting the reward, the behaviour will stop. You're giving them an incentive and you're paying them for the time that they give to you for those insights. If you don't do this, you're only ever going to get the usual suspects, which are the eager beavers who have got all the things to say about waste, fly tipping and everything. The people who come to all your meetings, the same 5 people, you'll only attract them. By giving people an incentive, you'll hear from somebody new. So that's just a bit on research. And if you want the more research around the whys to fly tipping, it's in the fly tipping guide, and you can get the link at the end of this. So just another exercise that's really useful to do, a bit of research and just getting ourselves in the insights of our target audience, is something known as an empathy map. So if we think about this, if we think about the ideal behaviour we want people to do, we can ask them, what do they see? What do they think? What do they feel? And what do they do? So this is an empathy map. And just for the purposes of today, just as a taster, I'm going to ask you to think, what do they see and what do they think? So if we wanted them to use the council's bulky waste service, what do they see? Maybe when they go on your website or when they go on your local council website. What do they think about putting waste inside the bins? So those people who can't be bothered, what do they think about doing the recycling? What do they think about separating out their recycling? What do they see around your estate? So just have a couple of moments to think about that, and then we'll start thinking about an initiative. And if you want to share anything in the chat, then please do. It'd be always interesting to hear what people feel about that. Jennifer, yes, your question.
I was just looking at this. I find it quite interesting. My scheme, it's actually made me want to go and do a survey on it. My scheme's really, really, really bad. And we've done everything we can to prevent the waste. We put gates on the outside because they were blaming others outside. But this booking a council bulky waste service, you've just made me think. I've had a couple of tenants that have said they're booking them and then they can't get in because they don't have keys for our site. And then because the intercom's not linked to the front door, they can't do it. So then bulky bobs are driving off without waiting for them to come downstairs and let them in.
There we go.
So I've just found that really, really interesting. So I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you. And this is the thing, that in your busy day jobs, you probably don't have time to do this reflection, but these processes really help us to understand what are those actual barriers to people doing it. So yes, Mark's Loan, this service is chargeable and there's lots of rules. I know for the local authority we're working out on with Metro Store currently, I went on their bulky waste service and it was saying book a collection. I was like, I don't want to book it. I just want to ask how much is it going to cost for the different items. And by just saying book a collection, it didn't say find out more. So just that wording was really off-putting. And then, oh, it was very confusing. Anyway, so these are some of the barriers that people can be facing, and this can really help us to come up with solutions very easily. So with this in mind, let's move on to devising an initiative. And with this, we're going to use the EAST framework. So this model is a model that was created by the Behavioural Insights team. They simplified, this is a simplified model because the previous model they had was too long and the civil servants weren't using it. So the behavioural scientists made their model easier. And this, if you don't take anything away from today, is easy. This is the be all and end all of behaviour change. How do we make things easy for people? And this is where we're going to start. We're going to start with easy. So in the guide, we've got it broken down into lots of different areas. So I'm going to give you a taster of those different areas to give you some ideas. So we've got online communications, and this is perfect to what we've just been saying. So how do we present bulky waste? It matters. So we need to make it easy for people. And this example here from Liverpool, they've actually made it easy. They've made it easier for people to do the donations. So actually, before you can book a collection, the first thing they tell you is where you can donate items to a charity. And they've put the links to the actual charities. They haven't said, look for a local charity, because no one's going to do it. They want to know which charities collect things. Then they've got recycle your items, and then they've got book a bulky waste service. Manchester use the language that people use. It says get rid of a large unwanted item. It doesn't say book a bulky waste service, because who knows what a bulky waste service is anyway. There's this great app which you can have into your website, and this again helps people with all the things they want to recycle, and they type in their language and it will tell them where they can get the where they can access the services. So how else do we make things easy? Well, free skip days. So this is something that a lot of social housing areas do already, so associations and local authorities. And that has been shown to lead to a reduction, although depending on the seasons, there can be an uptick. Sheffield included door knocking for migrant Slovak communities because they realised that they were putting it out in the local newspaper and on the Facebook pages, and people didn't access those. So think about your target audience and make it easy for them. Community cleanup days. So again, this is something where it's not just about grabbing things. You could also include recycling exchanges, which is what Cambridge did, and having a recycling sorting skip as well. So you're actually including that. Another event that was done by Fenland District Council, they actually invited residents to come and watch the waste being removed from big lay-by, and from that then people felt more inclined to call up their local authority to report things because they realised that things were being actions were being taken. How about your bin for structure? Oh, we've jumped ahead. So bins with pedals. So I wonder whether those people who don't want to, who are just dumping bags in the bin stores, can you improve your bins to actually make them easier for people to use and maybe more attractive? We'll talk about attractive in a minute. What about these recycling bags? So Newcastle Council have these, Lambeth using them. So this is something for people to hang up in their house to chuck all the recycling in, and then they can take to the recycling bins and empty it out into the recycling bins. Visual icons are really important because people don't read words. The brain processes images faster, so it's much easier if you use icons. And these bins here were ones we worked on with Metro Store for Fife. I think Sandy's on the call, and we used these outside blocks of flats, and we made this really easy because Fife Council positioned them so it was a few steps out of the flats and then you're at the food waste bin. So again, how can you make things easy for people? And how can you make it a bit hard, a bit less easy? So what can you do to put barriers in place from people doing fly tipping? So things like wooden street planters have led to 83 to 100% decrease in fly tipping. Other areas, local authorities have fenced off places and they've turned them into gardens, and using a combination of measures, so fencing, CCTV, community garden, this led to a 62% reduction in fly tipping in Doncaster. So with these things in mind, how could you apply this to your situation? So just a couple of minutes to think, how could you make it easier to do the right thing? So how do people get access to get access for the council to come and collect things? How could you make it harder to do the wrong thing? So where can you put up blocks or barriers? What would make that work? So just a couple of minutes and I'm going to stop talking.
Hi, so in our neck of the woods, we find CCTV is really good, and also we build bin paddocks. We use key fob systems that only residents have access to. This discourages outside fly tipping, outside properties.
What did you call it again?
A KMS, a key fob system, so like a little triangular pendency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So yeah, so that's an example of a barrier. Great. Thank you. Any other examples of any barriers that worked? Dover, yes. I think this case study is what I used for it. So thank you for your work. Jennifer?
Yeah, we're getting we've ended up getting to the point where we're getting the bin stores changed. So instead of being a fence around them, we're getting those is it like Metro, where the silver boxes and there's nowhere to hide basically, and you've just got to put the rubbish straight in to the holes, because we've had CCTV put up and all sorts and it still hasn't helped. So we're getting that now so that we'll be able to see who's doing it basically.
Right. We'll talk about CCTV in a minute, because yeah, it's a combination of actions. So how do we make things attractive? Well, we make bins colourful and visual, as I mentioned before. So these bins, not directly a social housing example, but on the streets, on the beaches of Bournemouth, the bins that had a colourful vinyl were used, and there was less littering in these areas than all the rest of the bins all the way along the seafront that were just big black 1100s. Clean bins. So one of the things around the Re-London work, where they tidied up the bins, made them more colourful, was they also cleaned the bins as well. So people felt happy about using them. And that's one of the things when we go to the rollout of the new service in this social housing block, is all the bins are being cleaned. And that also helps to signal that to people that they're cared for and that there's an effort being made, so that they are more likely to reciprocate it. So in the Recycling in Flats project, they provided new bins with colourful lids and more services, and they had a reduction in recycling contamination from 11% to 22%. Recycling rates increased, contamination decreased, and residual waste arising decreased as well. And another project where they engaged with the residents, it was called Waste It's Mine, It's Yours. They had recycling rates increasing as well, and waste reduction. And they had a stronger sense of community, because people have been involved in the consultation and they felt more of a sense of pride. And there was also a reduction in littering. So thinking about how we make this attractive for people is all about that engagement, making it visually more appealing, and demonstrating that you care about them, so they'll care about making an effort. Our communications can help with the attractive piece. So we frame things about the desired behaviour, not the undesirable one. So saying thank you for being part of our mission to recycle everything we can. Thank you for using the bin. Thank you for using the bulky waste service. It helps to normalise the desired behaviour. This example here was trialled by Keep Britain Tidy. I'm not sure whether the results have came out yet, but what they was doing was putting out signs saying the cost and how it could be spent differently. And how do we do the less attractive piece? Well, one of the barriers to people using bulky waste services, or one of the reasons that people fly tip, is because they don't think people get caught. They don't believe fine threats, they don't believe fine messaging, and so we need to reinforce that actually people do get caught. So this can be one of the things. So the bulky, the investigation tape around piles of waste. So you leave the fly tipping for a period of time, you put the tape around it, and in some places this has been shown to have a significant reduction. So there was a 64% in Newham. In Birmingham, people started to take away the items that have been left there. I know it varies in different areas, and again, this is why you have to trial things and test things out. So stencils also trialled by Keep Britain Tidy in Newham, and these left with 67% reduction. So saying dumping wastes money for your community. And then reports of people being caught. So these were trialled in Bristol, and they put these up in different areas saying someone has been fined at this location. And what they found was these were effective on short streets or cul-de-sacs where you haven't got lots of different types of fly tipping happening. On a street where you've got businesses, you've got time-banded waste being left out, you've got people in flats and social housing, there's a lot going on. But where you can do it in a confined area, it's more effective. And this is one of the things, if you are doing CCTV, are you telling people that people are being caught? Do people know that any actions are being taken? Because just using putting fine signs out saying people can be fined, they don't work. So just putting CCTV without any action from it is ineffective. Can I just ask that person is muted, please? Thank you. If you can find them in the list. So it's really important that where you're taking an action, there is a consequence, and we'll talk about some other examples of that in a minute. But I'm just going to open it over to you for another couple of minutes to think about how could you make it more attractive to use your bin system or to use the bulky waste service? How could you make it less attractive to fly tip?
Hi, this is AJ from Dover Council. I just thought I would highlight, I put a link to our campaign, Don't Rubbish Your Street, in the chat. This was a 6-week pilot campaign where we focused on residents putting out their waste on the incorrect day. We actually didn't do any enforcement in respect to this, and we managed to get a 73% reduction in bags being presented on the wrong day. We did this taking on board what Newham looked into by effectively putting stickers to bags when they're presented on the wrong day. They were color coded, and then we wouldn't collect them for a period of time first, and that had a massive impact. The week before we did that in the campaign, we did something different where we were still collecting the waste, but we would take a photograph of the waste which was presented incorrectly and then put a sign up in that location with the picture of that waste there. So we were kind of emphasizing the shame factor, and that seemed to have the biggest impact rather than threat of any enforcement or anything like that. And it had that massive change, and we didn't even need to serve one Section 46 notice. So it was very impactful, and it's another avenue of trying to change behaviour.
Perfect. And we'll talk about that. So that's that whole piece around making it less attractive. People, and we'll talk about in a minute what other things that will be activating. But yeah, the enforcement piece isn't, people think we need bigger fines. No, you don't. We need to be more, actually you need to understand what's going on, and actually there's some other things that are far more powerful on our behaviours. Where did you put the photos of the waste up? Oh, that's
that one.
questions.
Yeah, that one, we literally took a photograph of the waste, and then we found the nearest lamp column or street furniture to that location. So the problem we had is we were too efficient in collecting waste. Residents would put stuff out on the wrong day, they would wake up the next morning and it'd be gone. So for that period of time when we weren't, where we were still collecting the bags, you had that ghosting of that shaming of that picture being up there. So regardless of the waste not being there, they would still have to see that, and their neighbours would have to see that as well, to try and influence that behaviour.
And that is a perfect segue into the next one, which is social. And this is the thing that people underestimate, and they don't understand how powerful social influences are. And as Andre just shared, it effectively exemplified that. So we behave differently if we think we're being watched. We care what our neighbours think. They're keeping up with the Joneses. So people put out their recycling on recycling day in houses generally because their neighbours do, and they want to be seen to be doing the right thing. They don't do it because they care about recycling. They do it because of their neighbours. So keeping up with the Joneses matters. And that is a challenge then if you're keeping up with the Joneses means everyone's just dumping stuff, because that's the social norm that you're working with. So how can we try and address these social norms or change them? We can make people feel like they're being watched, or their behaviours have been accounted for. So the perfect example just shared. Other examples are things like wall of shame, although in the guide we put this as a proceed with caution, because if you don't have the people looking at your YouTube channel, no one's going to see it. But if you're a social housing and you've got pictures of people, are there ways that there might be issues with this, but are there ways that you can show, a still and say, we know who this person is? Can you demonstrate that people are being investigated with those?
There's a lot of implications with GDPR and showing images, so we have to be extremely careful of that on the social housing side.
Exactly. So, but just so there are councils who are doing this on public streets, so worth looking into how they have managed that, because they do call out saying, do you know who this person is? So yes, there's definitely those things.
I can't see us being in a similar position with that. We've come across a lot of GDPR stuff, and putting images up of people isn't something that we would do in general.
No, that's so I did say that's something to look into, and it's in our guide as a proceed with caution. But are there ways that you can demonstrate that the waste being dumped, that you've got a footage of it, and say this person is being investigated? How can you use your CCTV to publicise that you're investigating things, in the same way as the stickers on the piece of the waste, or the bulky waste, or the recycling going out on the wrong days? How can you demonstrate that there is accountability? So posters with stylized eyes have been shown to reduce antisocial behaviour for things like littering, dog fouling. They're being used by fly tipping campaigns. But a word of warning, they don't work in places like dark alleyways, because people know they're not being watched, or they've been less effective in social housing areas. But that could be because the social norms are stronger around people doing antisocial behaviour. But they are something to consider, and thinking about how can you use this piece. The other thing that you can do around this, and reinforcing the idea of people being caught, is things like the posts. So these are more from not on social housing, but for local authorities, putting out a post saying this person is being investigated, with a picture of the waste. The scrap of resources that are freely available, and they've got a whole range of these yellow and black ones. So these are duty of care examples, and then we've got the I was fined £400. So again, it's demonstrating that people are being caught. So you're changing the social norm where there's a perception that no one gets caught. And who are the people that people do listen to? If it's not you as the social housing association, or it's not you as the local authority, who do people trust? Now, in the research we conducted, we found that, the literature reviews, what we found was that people expected their landlord, especially in HMOs, to tell them what they were supposed to do with their waste, what day it was supposed to be put out, what was supposed to go in it. So if you've got HMO landlords that you can get information to, if you're a local authority and you need to engage with the social housing associations, how can they be the trusted messenger for you? The other trusted messenger is people who look like your target audience. Who do they trust? Who do they need to hear? And just an example, with the work that we're doing at the moment, I interviewed someone the other day, and an older gentleman, he said, oh, I didn't used to care about recycling, but since my friend Pat, since she told me about it, and since she told me about the plastic in the ocean, and since she does it, I've started doing it now. Another example from the project we were doing with Fife Council, somebody gave up on doing their food waste separation because they found it was disgusting because they were putting hot food in the bin and it was stinking. Their friend gave them recommendations of how to do it better, let the food cool down before you put it in the bin, and then they restarted it. So who are those local residents champions? Are there community groups that you can work with to help to spread the message? Who is it that we need to engage to help make this effective? So that is the social, and I'm going to just go on to timely and then give you a couple of minutes to think about both of them together. Well, actually, no, I will let you think about this now. So just think, how can you use a social influence to address this behaviour? So who are those social influences that people would trust? How can you demonstrate that people are being caught, that people are watching their behaviour? So in a timely fashion, to keep us to time, and so we have got a chance to answer those questions and open up to the floor, because I think always on these sessions you guys have got lots of insights from things that you've been doing. Timely, so the T of East, how do we make things timely? So we have talked about free bulky waste collections. So when are you doing those? Are there peak times when people start to get rid of things, like after Christmas? Are you doing your free bulky waste at those peak moments? And then other kinds of events. So Peterborough, they put on their own event just on recycling in a community hall on a Saturday. Hardly anybody showed up because people weren't interested. It wasn't a priority for them. But they've started going to supermarkets and attending other community events, and often alongside other community groups. And what they found from that is that they are having much more engagement and much more and people are interested. They're asking questions, oh, well, what do I do with this material? Because it's at the right time when people have got the headspace for it, or they're out and about, rather than expecting people to come to them. And then communications, so door knocking. So Peterborough, the same team, have seen an increase in recycling in flats because they've been doing door knocking. They've been giving people bags, they've been giving them leaflets, and they have seen a real improvement. And again, with the example of the skip day, there was an uptick in the Slovak community using it because they'd done that door knocking first of all. Another thing to think about is feeding back to people at the moment that they're doing that behaviour. So they're putting the stickers on people's bags when they've put them out at the wrong time. That is an example of a timely piece of engagement. And we did this with the Fife case study, with the food rollout in flats. We gave people feedback. So we were telling people how much food waste had been collected on a regular basis. So it wasn't just at the end of the 3-month trial, it was throughout the piece. And then at the end, we did a thank you letter and an article in the Residents magazine. So that was reinforcing the desired behaviour, thanking those people who had made an effort, and highlighting to other people that other people are doing it. So another way of improving that social awareness. So just a couple more minutes now to think about where you could communicate in a timely fashion to do the right thing or to stop the wrong behaviours happening. And then we will go to questions and anything that Nigel wants to share. Great, loads of great examples in the chat. What we have gone through today is part of the workshop that we are running as part of the fly tipping solutions package. So the idea is that the session lasts an hour and a half to 2 hours, and your teams get to work through this content, different fly tipping challenges in different groups, and they come away with things they can take forward. There's lots more examples in the guide, and as part of the package you get the guide, and you can print it out so that it's on the tables when we work through with people. The summary guide, which is available at flytippingsolutions.co.uk, has a chart with lots and lots and lots of examples from different local authorities of effective solutions, ones to proceed with caution, and things that need testing. So we've categorized things because what we are aware of is that people like your colleagues, MPs, elected members, people might be coming to, it's a great idea, we're going to do this, and then you can say, refer back to the guide, apparently this is a proceed with caution, because actually it might have a counter effect than what we actually think. So it's a resource to support you in being able to make decisions about the actions that you take.
Thank you, Livvy. Lots to think about there. So the first question is whether you'd got any examples of appropriate incentives when you're doing the research.
So what we're doing is giving people vouchers for supermarkets. So we're not giving people cash, but we're giving people vouchers, and they're online vouchers. So we are saying, we worked out which are people's local supermarkets, and we say, would you like an Asda or a Morrison's voucher? And we email it to people immediately, so they've got access. For people who don't have email, we're putting them in the post, but that way we're giving them something, and it's not a cash incentive, but it is obviously financial.
Very helpful, thank you. We had several negative comments regarding skip days, which didn't surprise me, and a great one there from Lindsay saying it was like bringing out your dead. I take it that's probably in your guide as a use with caution, is it?
Yeah.
Do you want to say any more about skip days?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky, isn't it? Because the issue we have is we are in a throwaway society where there's so much stuff that's being produced, people are replacing things, things don't have value anymore, so there isn't a desire to upcycle or recycle things. I've been talking to Freegal about how do you encourage reuse and how do you get things being put onto sites like that. So I think there's more work to do around that, but it's a tricky one, but they do work in some areas and in other areas say they don't. But I guess the question is, do they lower the frequency of just a never-ending supply of waste? But the issue we've got in social housing is people live in a very small space. If you get a new bed, you're not going to store the old bed till the new one to the next quarterly skip day. So this is some of the challenges, and this is where you've got to really understand what is going on for those people and that particular behaviour. So people have bought something new, they need to get rid of the old one.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned the storage space. Understandably, that's something close to my heart. There was mention of the bulky waste collection teams not being able to get access to the property. But another thing I've noticed is that there's often nowhere to actually store that space, to store the material that's awaiting collection. So I think as landlords, that's something we often need to think about. Is there somewhere where it can be put, where it's not going to attract more fly tipping, where it's not going to present a fire risk? So I'm glad you mentioned that about the storage space. Several comments regarding recharging sort of the waste disposal or the bulk waste disposal costs, cleanup costs to residents. Any observations around that at all?
I mean, I think all of these things, well, it says it's deterred people, hasn't it? So I think this is great. I mean, this is great where you can see what has happened and what hasn't. So yeah, all of these things are good examples of ways that you can use the existing infrastructure you've got to influence change. And I think adding to that, it's making sure that other people know that it's happening to people. So you're getting that comms out to say it's happening. There's one at the end from Andre saying, what's your recommendation for bin stores?
Yep, great question there, AJ, thank you. I think the key for for bin stores is that a lot of these principles that we've been covering, ease of use, they've got to be accessible, they've got to be within within reach for the residents in a location they can get to easily, otherwise it doesn't work. They need to look attractive, they need to be secure, they need to be designed so that people can use them without getting their hands dirty. Think about obstacles. I think all the things that we've been talking about today, actually drilling into what the obstacles are, but what the incentives are, what the motivations are, all apply. Things like removing the space where people tend to fly tip. So let's say a corral, for example, I find that people, they'll put bulky items inside the bin room and they think they've done their job. The fact that it's not in a bin and they haven't, that they haven't actually done what they should do. They think they've done their job. So education around that is really important. And contamination and recycling is a big one. And it starts really from making sure that they've got the containers actually within the flat that they need to actually separate the material from the start. When they get to the bin store, you need to make it difficult for them to put large bags of rubbish in the recycling, restrict the openings. The principles that we've been covering today all apply, and certainly we'll be picking that up again on future sessions. We've got one on simpler recycling on 17th of June. So if you haven't already registered for that, will be coming out soon. That's my thoughts on bin stores.
Michelle? Sure.
Yeah, I've remembered my question now. It was, you were mentioning about when you've done clearances, that adding the cost of the clearance to the service charges. One of the things that we've found, particularly with the social housing areas with flats and things like that, when we've added the service charge we've added the cost of clearances to service charges, it's actually made no difference, because most of the people in those situations are receiving benefits anyway, so they just pass the service charge on to their universal credit who pay it, so there's no actual financial implication for them whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is why aren't they, it's probably, so the thing about this is it's the road to least resistance, isn't it? They leave some stuff out, it gets paid. They didn't have to contact the bulky waste service. They didn't have to go on the website. They didn't have to navigate the council. They didn't have to get the things, they just didn't have to do any of those things. And that's the problem, is fly tipping is very easy. Whereas contacting the council for their bulky waste service is very difficult. So there is a question. Social Housing Association we're working with at the moment, they did used to include a bulky waste service as part of the service fee, and so residents who've been there forever were, berating the fact that this service had disappeared, and the bulky waste boys no longer helped them carry things down their stairs. So there's a 70-year-old woman said she had to saw up a rug to do it. So there are, people want services, so that's the challenge.
That's good. Jennifer, do you want to come in with a question?
Yeah, I was just saying, the scheme I've got at the minute that's really bad is it's on affordable lets, so there's no option to put a service charge on for anything we're doing, but we're having to do it because the neighbours at the side are obviously putting formal complaints in constantly, so we can't even put anything in place where we try and leave it for a little bit to see if they will then remove it because they get fed up. It's not a doable option, but I will say I've taken a lot away from this meeting that I know that I'm going to be able to use, and I think that actually might work, that I would never have thought about because you're in the situation all the time. So I am like,
can you tell us what one of those is? Because that would be interesting to hear what you can take
little tiny things, like we're going to get these bin stores put in, but the colours. And I thought, because he said to me on the meeting, what colours do you want them? And I was thinking, why does it matter? And because I was just going to say, do them all grey because they're all the same and they're all bins. But now I'm going to go back and say, actually, can we have maybe a green for the general waste, a pink for the this, and make them quite like. And I was also thinking we could probably stick notices on the front of the bin stores and stuff like that. I'm also going to go away and do a survey with the help from the team, because I think there's a lot of questions here that we could probably get answers to if we did that and actually included them. and said, why are you doing this? And then when you've just mentioned people getting down the stairs, we've got a lot of ladies with prams and babies, and they can't do it on their own. They've got no other family members. And I've had a sofa sat in one of the you know, things for ages, one of the communal areas, and she can't move it. And we've got no one available to go and help her move it. And I'm actually thinking now that's quite unfair, because there should be some way of us assisting her, really, if that's the situation, because it is, although it's affordable, it's still social housing, isn't it? They still need support and stuff like that. So yeah, I found this really, really useful, so thank you very much.
And just, Jennifer, one thing, so on the colours of the bins, check in with your local authority to see what colours they're using, because if people have come from, they might associate with those colours, so don't go too off centre. And WRAP have got all those icons, so you can just download the icons, and they've got the suggested colours there on their website. They have also, I think they've made it easier to find things now. They did a brand, but try and work with what already exists to avoid more confusion.
That's fab information, thank you. I'll have a look at that after this.
Thank you, Jennifer. Kevin, do you want to come in with a question?
Yeah, sure. At what point is the landlord responsible for clearing these bin stores? Shouldn't it be up to the customers and the local authorities, which is why the customers pay their council tax? Why does everyone look at the landlord to come and pick everything up? If it's contaminated, why aren't the local authorities going to the customers directly themselves?
Who's that question to? Is that to the local authority or to?
That's to everybody. Everybody must go through exactly the actual same thing. We get calls, oh, our bins are overflowing, and from a landlord's perspective, it's like, well, contact the local authority, and then the local authority passes it back to the landlord because they don't want to pay for the clearance, and it just goes round in circles. And it'd be really good to get some sort of idea about who's responsible for what.
So yeah, and I think this is a very good example of this whole thing of who's the messenger, who do people think is responsible for it. So the person who lives in that house, they think the landlord's who they have to deal with. One of the things in that instance, if the bins are overflowing, that suggests that and those are general waste bins, that people aren't doing the recycling. So trying to understand why that behaviour is happening. Is there adequate enough bins there in the first instance? If it's HMO, then probably not. Are they actually entitled to have more bins because it's actually an HMO property with that local authority? Because quite often there is that option. And how do you get people to do more recycling? Because if they do more recycling, they have less black bag waste. There's I don't know, anyone from a council can say, you know, that actually if people put their recycling, they did their recycling, in theory, the stuff that goes to be general waste is just soft plastic, and you know, depending on whether you've got a food waste service in your area. So trying to understand why there's so much black bag waste in the first instance and why those bins are overflowing will help you to solve that problem, to then think who's responsible.
Yeah, I think it's a local authority responsibility to remove clean recycling and refuse that's in the bins. They're not responsible for dealing with contamination. They're not responsible for picking up what goes on the floor. So yeah.
What happens then if, I don't know, you've got 8 properties that are all individually owned, got nothing to do with any landlords at all, and someone contaminates the bins? How would the council recover the money? Because at some point someone's going to have to empty it. How would they recover them? How would they recover their money there? Would they write to the customers individually, or do they just, you know, especially if there isn't any landlord, how does that work? Because we've had a few cases where bins have been contaminated. We have a series of social rented properties and a series of leaseholder properties. Why is it down to the landlord to sort it out? What do the council do? They can't just leave it forever and ever and ever and just let it build up until nobody can move. So what would be the council's response to that?
So it depends on who your council is, and I'm not speaking for any council. I'm just going to speak for examples of solutions that can work, because I'm a solution focused person here. And so Suez, I think it was Suez, or actually another bin company. Other bin companies are available. A well-known bin company who were delivering a service for a local authority worked with and another council. What they did was, where they saw contaminated bins, they sent letters around to people. So they sent letters to people with photographs of those bins. So that's that piece around the you're being watched, the accountability piece. They also worked with the social housing landlords to help disseminate this information, because for them, they can't, if it's an HMO or if it's a social housing, there's lots of floors, it's harder for them to access it. So they work together to get those letters out to identify that there were implications and that they were being watched and what were the appropriate behaviours. So it's definitely something about working with people on that. But I know for the social housing area we're working at the moment, there is the property that's owned by the social housing, and then like, oh, that's on council land. So they have their, oh no, that fly tipping is happening. Oh no, that's for this council to pick up because it's the highways. Oh no, that's on our land. Then that's, so there is kind of a dance with which bit of land it is and who's responsible. The other thing that the council can do is they can offer, they can issue notices. I can't remember what they're called now, but if people have got dirty gardens and it's a private house, so it could be someone's renting it, it could be that, so it could be landlorded property, it could be somewhere that's privately owned, they can issue a notice to say, if you don't clear up your garden, we will take action. Because it's unsightly. So there are things that the council can do like that. I can't remember what they're called now, but that's that, yeah.
No, that's good. I think you touched on it there, you hit on it there with the land ownership. AJ's offered to give us a response from local authority. AJ, if you wouldn't mind popping that in the chat, that'd be fantastic, because I'd really like just to take these last two questions if we can. Lindsay Ann, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, it's not really a question. I was just going to respond back to Kevin. The local authority, you're right, can serve notice, and it is about ownership. So on a private dwelling, if they don't empty the bins or leave loads of mess about, they can actually take enforcement action, but they can enforce against the landlord as well as the sort of owner of the building. So that's why they do tend to come back to the council. The council will come back to housing associations and say, your tenants have done this, but it's your problem because it's your property, and if you don't sort it out, we will enforce. And that's the sort of, so you really need to have really good working relationships with your council enforcement team. In Bradford, we've developed that. We've got a really close working relationship, and it works both ways. You've got to scratch their back as well when they need a bit of assistance and help. And the same with the recycling team, the waste collection for the recycling. You've got to be there to help out with information, sort of, days of action where you're going out and selling recycling and things like that. You've got to work alongside your local authority, not against them, and that way they will sort of always be there to advise and assist you and do the best that they can. In Bradford, they tend to come to us first and say, can you sort this problem? We don't really want to enforce. We know we work well together. Can you help? Can you sort it and let me know what you're doing about it? And I think that's sort of like a good way to work together, really, just because we're all in the same boat. We want to assist them. They've got their targets and their legislation to meet as well, haven't they? So, but yeah, that's the answer, that they can enforce it, Kevin, and they can make you do it as a landlord.
Thank you, Lindsay Ann. That's really clear. Really appreciate that. So last one then, Katri, do you want to come with your question?
Yes, hi, I'm from local authority in London, and we need to make a big change, because what we do, we send our bulk trucks out every single day and they collect all the bulk rubbish. So our tenants now think, oh, it's a free service. And if we don't go one day, I'll get councillors emailing me with photos. You have missed the bin. You have missed the bag that's been. You missed this thing that was dumped. So I don't know where to start really, because we need to really change the mindset. People now expect every day someone will come and collect the bulk rubbish.
So just a really quick reply on this. This is exactly where so when you have to tell your local elected members that you need to leave it for a period of time with some notices on it, and at the same time you then need to go around and door knock or provide leaflets to that area to say, so this thing's being investigated, here is the bulky waste service information. Birmingham County Council did this, City Council did this, and they found that there was an uptick in the bulky waste. So you have to kind of not be so good at clearing up, because it's a double-edged sword. You've got the broken window effect, which if you don't clear it up, more people put it there. But if you clear it up, why is anyone going to pay? Because they know you're doing it anyway.
Yes.
So but you've got to get those, so this is where you need to take this guide to those elected members and say, look, this is what this is saying.
Okay, cool.
Also available to do a workshop with those elected members too.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for that and question, that response, really helpful. Well, I think that brings us to a close. We've gone over a tiny bit, but that was really helpful, really interesting. Thank you very much, Livvy. Thanks for everybody that joined. We will be sending out a summary of key points and a recording in the next few days. So with that, thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic rest of your day.
Simpler recycling. Are you ready? New rules mean all households, including flats, must have weekly food waste collections by April 2026. Join us on 17th of June to hear from Islington and Southwark councils as they share how they are tackling the challenges in high-density housing. Sign up now for practical insights and real-world solutions.